Aubrey. How's it
Hey,
going?
Laurie. So excited for this conversation.
Yes, and I think that you are the perfect person to speak to a lot of these things because we want to talk about the relationship between development and marketing. And since you live in that space every single day, I live in it a little bit less than you do, and more of the enrollment side. But, what do you think needs to be done in terms of strengthening a school's philanthropy program and how marketing can really help?
Oh, I love this question. So, I think it's so interesting because we all bring different skill sets to our roles in schools, right? And fundraisers have that knowledge of how do we make the ask? How do we organize this fundraising event, right? And then there's marketers who have another set of skills. And I think when we're looking at those two areas, the best thing they could do is work together and collaborate because those skills are needed on both sides. For example, I have worked with many development committees and development offices at schools. And what often happens is when they're producing something like the solicitation letter, their way of doing it is this long letter that's written like it's a double-sided 8.5 by 11, and it's not really engaging. But their skill set is fundraising, right? They know how to make an ask, they know how to do things, but they're missing the marketing component of marketers know, hey, parents' attention span is like nothing, right? If we did X, Y, and Z, we could really make this piece more engaging and people would see, oh, you're asking me for money and this is how much I should be asked for, instead of getting overwhelmed by a long letter. So I feel like there's a lot of ways that marketing could help support development and not just, hey, produce our annual report, but more like, how can we strategically look at what you're doing and complement it? Because you're doing some great work here, and we can take our expertise and help you move this forward. And I would also say another thing is that with major donors being more of the people that we want to be asking and the things that we want to lean into now in development for schools and fundraising for schools, that participation piece can really be outsourced to marketing in terms of an automated sequence and stuff like that. So there's another collaboration element. There's really so much that people could be doing. I'm curious, Lori, how have you seen this lived out in schools?
Right. Well, I think what's most important is building that culture of philanthropy at a school. And this is really at any nonprofit organization, but in a school, there's another layer because families are paying tuition. In some respects, grandparents are paying tuition. So, how do we really set the stage? How can marketing and development work together to say, yes, we understand that you pay tuition, but we are a school that wants to give to others, that wants to amplify our programs, that wants to help children who can't afford to be here, and that really serves as the foundation for giving. And then I think it's really that ongoing partnership between marketing and development, not just when there is an annual report or there is a solicitation. At my former school, I met with the development department once a week, whether we were in a campaign or not. And, as an advancement team, me and the head of enrollment and the head of development had lunch once a week. So I always knew what was going on in the development department, but I don't think that's the case at a lot of other schools. And as an added layer, there's friction between development and marketing. Development wants to do things one way, marketing wants to do things another, and then it ends up being oil and water. So, this might not even be specific to development and marketing, Aubrey, but how do you think that we could help sort of bridge together members of the advancement team to be able to move forward, especially in terms of fundraising initiatives?
I think that's so important. I see this all the time. When I first started working with one of our clients, they were completely siloed. Like everyone was siloed doing their things. No one knew when this thing was happening for development and when this thing was going out from communications lens. And so it was kind of like a mess, right? Because you had annual fund solicitation letter hitting at the same time this other thing was hitting at the same time a volunteer request was being made. And it was like this messy pudding where no one really knew what was going on when. And when we started meeting regularly, which I think is important, we actually started some team meetings early on and we started planning for the next year where we really outlined, hey, this is what everyone is doing. Here's our whole calendar. Here's what everyone's working on. And when people started working together and understanding, oh, Betty down in development is doing X, Y, and Z, and she might need some extra help during this time. This is her key point periods of when she's going to be really crazy busy, and here's how I can support. Then it really flowed much better. And it was both better for the office as well as for our parents and everyone out there who was receiving these communications and interacting with both departments.
Right. And Aubrey, I'm really curious to hear how you'd answer this question. Schools often ask me who writes the material, who's writing the content, whether this is between marketing and admission or marketing and development. My answer to them is who has the ability to write? Sometimes the development director is a star writer. Sometimes they have consistent writer's block and can't get a word out edgewise. And it's really the marketing department with some supportive bullet points can be those head content writers. Have you been asked that question, one, and how would you answer it?
Oh, absolutely been asked. And I loved your answer because I think it is spot on. It's who can write. And then also, how do we keep a consistent voice, right? I think that too is really important. And I found that the collaboration between the two, like a lot of times marketing, like I'll always, if I'm working with the development team, I always want to see everything that comes through. Like we'll have a planning session about it before. What are your main pieces of content? What is your messaging here? What's the story you're going to tell, right? Storytelling is so important. And then like, how are we going to tell that, right? And then they might come through with like some ideas, and then I might come back with a few. I think it really is a collaborative effort, and it really is about what are the end goals, and then how do we get there, and how can we support along the way.
Right. And I think also that project plan and having something on paper with who is accountable, what are the deadlines, what's happening, and allowing everybody to have access to that, whether that's in a spreadsheet, on a Google Doc, on the back of a piece of paper, in Trello, in Asana, that sort of shared accountability and that full visibility for everybody, I think can really help to build that trust and help things get done.
Absolutely, without the stress, the last minute fires too, because, they're like, oh, we forgot to send X, Y, and Z last week, or oh, I didn't realize you needed this. So, yes, absolutely. I would completely agree.